Okay, so welcome back, guys, to the Cognition School Podcast. We have an incredibly special guest and a personal friend of ours. Demi Chalkias is here. She's one of our top motorsport drivers, and I always reference her anytime we're working with athletes here, and they're always talking about, hey, is this applicable for other sports? I said, absolutely, and I always bring up Demi's name. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Satoshi. It's a pleasure to be here in your beautiful new facility.
Yeah, what do you think of this place?
Oh my God, I am blown away. This is a facility where I wish I had this even at a younger age in my career, because I can see the potential of this and how much it can develop an athlete's career. You have everything for everything, something to help with every aspect of sports. So it's super cool.
Yeah, it's interesting because we got connected through Ben, and
Yes.
But I've been following your career even well before that because obviously I was in motorsports for just a little short period of time, and I always believe that what we do stems from what I've experienced, racing at Motorsport and taking the cars out and stuff.
Yeah.
That when you're traveling that fast, mm-hmm. right? Like how fast do you go on that back straight at Motorsport, do you think?
Yeah, 250, 260.
250, right?
I've been 310. It just depends on what car you're in.
Okay, so I remember when I was when I had my 911 and I took it at max, I was probably like 200.
Yeah, which
right?
is still a lot faster than the average person has ever experienced before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember doing I think it was 20 laps. Mm-hmm. I forget, it felt like 20 anyway. But when I was doing that, and then I would drive home. I'd go in my regular car to drive home, and I feel like I could do anything.
Yep.
Like the whole world was really slow. So I use that as an analogy from my athletes here, mm-hmm. whether you play hockey or baseball or basketball, anything, that when you're training that quickly, when your world is that fast in 1 second, and then you get into the real world, and it's like, oh, this is easy, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of how you feel like when you're doing your racing, and then all of a sudden you get onto the regular roads to go home? Does it feel slow to you?
Absolutely. And that's something that we actually tell people. So after a day at the track, if I'm instructing or coaching, it's, hey guys, we were just operating at a very fast pace. When you go onto the street now, the speed limit is going to feel a lot slower.
Yeah.
So just being mindful of that. And it does take time to kind of calibrate your brain to kind of switch from being so on and so fast and having to kind of receive information at a faster rate, and now going on everyday streets. It does feel slower, but we tell everyone it's supposed to be slow because you're now sharing the road with people who aren't as trained or had that experience. But It is so true, because now your brain has just gone through a whole day of processing things at a much faster rate. And so it is applicable for other sports, because now, say for example, you're out there training for hockey or basketball, and things are they're going and you're running fast drills. When you go now to the game, it's gonna be oh yeah, I can do this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and obviously you've been racing for a long time. How many years now have you been?
I've been officially racing for cars for just over 10 years, but with my go-karting and everything, it's been a while. It's been a good half of my life for the most part.
That's amazing. And obviously you've been at the highest levels within racing in Canada. Mm-hmm. Tell us how you kind of got to that point, because obviously being a female driver in a male dominated, I would say, right? A sport. Yeah. How did you get to that point there?
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting story, and one that I could go into a very lengthy background on. But long story short, I was always an athlete. I specialized in triathlons. I would say that was my main sport. But basketball, volleyball, rugby, track and field, cross country, I played it all. But triathlons were the sport where I trained with Olympic coaches, and I was competing at a national level, and I wanted to go to the Olympics so bad with triathlons. But things didn't work out for me because I wasn't training. I was overtraining and I wasn't eating properly. And so essentially my body just shut down on me. For lack of better terms, I blew out the left side of my hip. And so as an athlete, to have to stop cold turkey, it's very hard mentally. We talk about, going full force at the track and having to go on your, street drives. For my brain, it was like I was working out 7 times a day and just had to stop. And I didn't know what to do with myself because I was still competitive. I was still an athlete. And so I started thinking, okay, well, I'm not useless. What else can I do? And we grew up in the country driving everything. We had dirt bikes, 4-wheelers, golf carts, cars. Like my dad had us at a very young age driving manual. So I just said, why don't I put myself into go-karting? And so I put myself into go-karting and saw that I had talent and I was very passionate about it. And so I just kept up with that and soon after started doing advanced driving courses. And so I was at then known as Motorsport, but now Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, doing some advanced driving courses. And I was volunteering prior to that, so I got a free school out of my volunteer hours. And at that point, my club that I was volunteering with was like, you know what, Demi, let's give you a free class, come through the weekend, have an instructor and so forth. And I didn't have a car. And my dad's like, okay, I'll give you my track prepared Subaru. Now, to give you a little bit of background on that, I was an athlete who was taken out of my sport, really trying to find something. And I was just handed a 600 horsepower Subaru STI and was told to go play on the track. And so of course I got addicted to it and, came out of the car and I'm like, this is what I want to do. And so at that point I was in university and decided I can't work enough jobs to make racing work. So I dropped out of university, worked 3 jobs, bought myself a race car, and long story short, made a career out of it.
Wow. And from the karting world, because there's only so many kart tracks here, at least in the GTA, right? So. And I know that there's a significant amount of travel and it's a big commitment. Tell us a little bit about how committed you have to be from a time and resource perspective.
Just like anything in life, if you want to be successful, you have to be completely devoted to your sport or your career, whatever it is you're chasing. And, it's kind of similar to hockey. So I worked at a hockey arena for 6 years, just at the snack bar. I was the snack bar girl.
Oh, okay.
But I saw from then like parents showing up at 5 a.m. and they had like late night hockey practices and games, and like you got to see the families and kind of understand their schedule and how dedicated it is. It's very much similar to racing, where we're at the track bright and early. Like we're out of the house by 5 at the track and you're there all day. And it doesn't stop there. Now with simulators and racing sims and stuff like that, it's like, it's an ongoing thing all the time. You're always practicing, but it's a complete dedication to the sport. Hi. And it gets even more of a dedication when you get into like actual car racing, because there's so much more to prepare. So when you're not racing, you're prepping karts, you're organizing the trailer, you're getting everything, you're hustling for marketing and sponsorship. So it's a nonstop hustle to be a race car driver. For sure.
I mean, you touched a little bit about the marketing and the sponsorship. Like how much do you have to put into doing that aspect of it as well from a business point of view? Yeah,
so we kind of make a joke. We always say 90% of our sport is the off-track stuff with marketing and trying to find sponsorship, and that last 10% is being in the cart or the car.
Really?
Yeah, it's, racing is such an expensive sport, and if you don't have the financial backing behind you, you don't get track time, you can't race. And so a lot of it, especially in the Canadian market, it's tough to kind of find sponsorship on a large level to kind of get you further. So you're constantly having to hustle and find multiple sponsors to make the season work. I'm somebody who didn't come from a financial backing. I was never kind of just handed a paycheck to say like, hey, you know what, we'll take care of this, go racing. And so if you see my cars when I was at the regional level, they are plastered in stickers because I had to find so many sponsors to help make it happen, and that still took me paying out of my own pocket for some stuff, and I was just serving tables at the time. So it's a non-stop hustle and a non-stop grind, and then once you're there, you're never guaranteed that you're back the next year, and that's the tough thing. Like you can be the fastest driver, but if you don't bring budget again for the following year, then that's your career. That's it, right? So it's every year, every season, it's always a hustle.
And obviously, as you're having success in racing, you got your podiums and championships. Like, what does that feel like? Like after you've done a race, you go onto a podium, and obviously I've seen you on the podium.
Yeah.
And I always think like, well, what does that feel like?
Yeah.
Right?
I get goosebumps even at the question because it's. So I'll give you 2018. For example, so in 2018, that's when I said at the beginning of the year during my off season, I was like, I am focusing 100% on racing and I'm taking home a championship. And my dad was kind of like, he didn't want to show it, but he knew how competitive the class that I was racing in was going to be, and was just kind of like, okay, like we'll do our best kind of thing. And I was like, no, Dad, I'm taking home the championship. And in 2018, I ended up winning almost every race and took home the championship. And I was the first female in Canadian history to do it. Mm-hmm. And I remember the first time I got on podium and won, it was just like this overwhelming sense of like, hell yeah, like I knew it. Like it's just like a great sense of pride and relief. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of relief because there's a lot of questions that kind of go through your head. Like, am I going to have the proper car? Is it going to be set up correctly? Do I have like, who's our new competitors? Like the first race of the season, you're always trying to scope people out, especially if you hadn't raced against them. And so you got to have like this immense amount of belief in yourself, but in racing, it's not just yourself. It's not like when I was in triathlons where if I didn't train hard enough, I wasn't going to perform. With us, we have a whole like machine that we have to keep also at its prime to also see success. So it's the greatest feeling in the world, and there's a lot of highs and lows in racing, and I always say you kind of got to be able to balance it, because if you're constantly up and down mentally, it's not the greatest. But yeah, it's one of those things you celebrate, you get it out of your system, but then you just focus forward to the next one because there's more to be done because you're looking for a championship, not just the race.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think for most of the people that are kind of watching racing, I think people are just starting to, or either they've been in Formula One, they follow everything on a weekend, or some people are just getting kind of into it now, like because of the Drive to Survive, right? And it's great because obviously the fan base is getting bigger. Like I've been going since I was a kid too. So my father, his company was a sponsor at Williams.
Oh, very cool.
Back in the day,
awesome.
right? With Mansell and
that was my favorite team, by the way. I've posted like Williams posters ever. I was big,
So my dream, actually, believe it or not, and Rio would laugh, but when I saw this lobby, I actually wanted to buy a show car to put in here.
Oh, so cool.
And it was the FW13 because it had like the Canon logos and stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to put it in this lobby. But then I realized it's a little bit too small. Yeah, and I probably have to put it on diagonal. But for me, like I grew up with it. And at the time, nobody, I wouldn't say nobody, but there's a lot less, right? Like in terms of fan experience and stuff. Now it's like a show, right? And I know that now they have the F1 Academy for the women's racing as well. And then I guess my question is that something that you kind of envisioned as you were, kind of having success over the years to hopefully get to that kind of a Formula One level, or was it more just like, I'm good here?
It's super interesting because there's so many different classes and categories of racing. And I grew up in an F1 family. Like we watched F1, like that was our thing on, whenever the race weekends were growing up. And it was, for me, something I enjoyed watching, but I never looked at myself as an open wheel racer. I was a car enthusiast first. So I grew up, we always make the joke that, my father always wanted a son and he was blessed with 3 girls and I was just the last one. So I was kind of like the son he never had. I was always in the garage, fixing cars, modifying cars, and fascinated with cars as a whole, and kind of looking at a street car, like a performance sporty streets car, and being like, what can that do on a racetrack? Like if we put more aero on it or this or that. So I've always kind of been a sports car racer through and through. And so, it shows in the trajectory of my career. I've always been sports car, but it's super interesting to see and very nice to see more companies and corporations helping more women get into the sport and providing a safe place for them, because in the earlier parts of my career, yes, I was, most often the only female there. And, I never really recognized until people were like, oh, you're like the only girl. My daughter wants to meet you and this and that. And I always loved seeing other little girls there. But it wasn't until one day I was looking around the driver's meeting and I'm like, I am the only girl here. And so it's nice to kind of see more support, because I feel as though women belong in racing, and I always put this pressure on myself to always see podium and to get championships and to always show myself at the pointy end of the field, because I didn't want to just be the girl racing. I didn't want to just participate. Like, I wanted to dominate. I wanted, other women to know, like, hey, this is something you can do really good at. And so, so the F1 Academy is a wonderful initiative, and I know some girls that are actively racing in it, and it's great for them. But for me, I don't know. I would do it, but I think my heart and soul is with sports car racing.
Now, is there a significant difference between open wheel and sports cars?
For sure, yeah. Sports car racing, you're really kind of hunting for more of the mechanical grip of the car. Obviously, we have a closed cabin and a roll cage over us, and open wheel cars are usually more aero dependent and like definitely wicked fast through corners and so forth. But it's a completely different driving experience between the two of them. But yeah, I don't know. I always kind of started off as like a car nerd first before getting into racing, and so I gravitated towards sports car. But I have driven some open wheel cars, and they're really fast and fun. So.
Different experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I know you and I earlier talked about the physical aspects of racing. Talk to us a little bit about that, because some people think racing is not a sport, right? Like, it's easy to kind of say that because you're not physically moving, but obviously you and I know way more than that. But maybe if you could just share in terms of how you kind of train for racing as well.
For sure. And it's interesting, there's still kind of that stigma around racing where they don't think that race car drivers are real athletes, but if you see the amount of training and focus that we have to do to prepare to be in a car. I mean, not only just dealing with the heat, it's extremely hot in the car. So when you're working out, like you'll do workouts in saunas or keep a hoodie and track pants on to kind of train for that heat. But you're also under intense pressure and focus. And you can't lose that focus for like a single second, because that can be, not to be dramatic, but it could be life or death for race car drivers, or, a big impact and a big bill to send to your sponsors and apologize for. So you definitely don't want to do that, but it takes a lot of endurance, because it is very physical, racing a car. Although you don't need the brute strength, you do need that physical endurance, because we are pulling a lot of G's through corners and having to stabilize yourself, and like, even just like when you're coming through a corner and constantly like catching it on the edge of grip, and like all of that is working your core, your legs. Like the amount of people don't even take into consideration the amount of pressure you need for brake force, like your brake pedal. Like there is a lot of brake pressure that you need, especially in the GT cars. And so I can speak from just getting a fresh background on that, because I've always been athletic, but I went through a knee surgery on my left knee, and that's the leg that we brake with. We use right foot gas, left foot braking. Right. It's faster than doing this for anyone watching, but the amount of brake pressure after my knee surgery, it was like I had to squeeze with my glute almost to push my whole leg into it, because I didn't have the strength required for how much brake pressure was needed. So it is a very physical sport. Endurance-wise, you need to be on your game, because fitness also plays a role in your mental ability and your mental cognitive performance. And so if we're not fit and we're doing, even like a 45 or an hour long race, you can't be tired. You have to have your brain on. And I've done 25-hour races, and I did say 25, not 24, and, did double stints where it was like over 3 hours of driving. So and you have to be fit. It's just part of the.
So you're in the car for 3 hours?
Yeah, driving? Nonstop. Yeah, at Spa. I was racing in Belgium. God. Yeah, and I did. I signed up. I was like, you know what, guys? No one really wanted to volunteer to do the night stints because visibility and so forth. But we were with a field of 120 cars, all spec cars. Right. And so I already knew the track was going to be lit because of the headlights. And it's cooler at night, so I knew the engine would run better. So I'm like, I'll do the night stints. So yeah, I did 3 hours nonstop. So it was good. I got out of the car and I was just like, I want to keep going. going. Like, yeah, so it was good.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, I thought maybe it'd be like 45 minutes or something like that, but
no, it depends what race you're doing.
I see. Yeah. What's like the most exciting race for you? I know you mentioned Spa, and I could probably guess that's probably one of your favorite ones. But would you say that's the one that kind of really is your highlight of your career, or do you have other ones?
So far, definitely. Spa just stands out for so many different reasons. It was my first time racing in Europe. And Spa is just so iconic. And, you know, when they tell you to go flat up Eau Rouge, you're like, okay. And when you do it for the first time, you're just like, oh my God. But yeah, and just being in a field again of 120 cars, like there was nonstop battles, like every lap, every corner, every hour of the race. And the level of competition in the race that I was doing was just phenomenal. Like there was a gentleman who I battled with for a whole stint, so about an hour and a half, and we were back and forth with each other. And it was so cool. There's like a little chicane just before the straights where the F1 garages are, if anyone knows Spa. And we came in there and we were like side by side just waiting to see who was going to break first. And we literally went up the chicane like this and like this. Like we were like, it was just like the best racing ever. And I continued with my double, and he had pitted out. And he came up to the garage to be like, who was I just racing with? I want to shake their hand. That was so good. And then they're like, oh yeah, she's still out on track. And the guy was like, it was a girl. I thought that was like, you know, like for some reason he was like an angry Frenchman, but but it was all really good racing. But that for sure. And I think another race that stands out as just a very sentimental and just a cool race where I was like, oh my God, I belong here, was at Sonoma last year. It was my first time racing professionally in the States, and of course kind of going down to the States to race with like people who are ex-IndyCar racers, full-time GT3 racers in IMSA, and factory drivers. It's like, oh man, okay, this is the real test to see where I stand. And I went out for my first stint and honestly killed it. I had great race pace, moved us up positions. We were like, I think up to, I don't know, we were like at the pointy end of the field with the lead pack. And I came in, nailed the driver change, and I knew my dad was in the grandstand, and I just like ran up to him and I'm like, Dad, I did it. And I just start crying and he's crying. So just for kind of the sentimental side of things, and just that was the first real taste of knowing like, hey, I'm fast and I belong with the pros, and that was a very cool moment for me.
That must be like, I mean, I only watch it from, you know, the stands, and I get to see like just on the surface, right? But to kind of understand like, you know, what drivers go through and what families go through. For sure. As well. That's really intriguing.
It's definitely a family thing, like any sport. You need the help of family to get ahead. Like if you really want to take it seriously, and even just to have people in your corner, you know, because like I said, the highs and lows of racing, you need a good support system, because when things are low, it's pretty bad. So it's nice to kind of have people that, you know, can put their arm around you at the end of the day and just like, let's go get ice cream. You know, I love you. Everything's going to be okay. We'll go at it another time.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the tactical side of driving, because I always like to pick your brain on you know, how to be a better driver in general, right? But like, I mean, what's kind of like your philosophy when it comes to, let's say it's a track that you don't know, and you're going into a race that, you know, again, you don't really know the field. It's your first time doing it. What do you think about? What's your kind of thought process before you go into a race like that, where you really don't know anything?
For sure. I mean, I'll kind of start this off by saying I will never go into a race not knowing anything, because I will do so much homework prior. I'll watch all of the races from the previous years, and I'll make note of, okay, where do I see them passing? What rumble strips and curbs are they taking? Where does the car look like it can set? And then we're putting hours on the sim to learn the track layout prior to going. So there's always like a general idea of what I'm dealing with. But testing is number one, right? We always get at least a day to go and test the track and test and see what's going on. And so for me, it's like, all right, let's figure this out. That's always kind of like my main thing in my head, is like, let's figure this out. And at the pro level, you don't have time to really take too long to figure it out. You can take 1 or 2 laps to go and scout the course, but then you got to be on, and you got to be on pace within your first session of being out there, or the team's going to be like, what are you doing? And so going into a new track, it's a great question because I never really thought about what I think about, but I just know preparation. Preparation is number one for anything, because the only times I've ever felt anxious or nervous is when I felt like I hadn't done enough to prepare for that. So really reviewing, similar to other sports where you review games and stuff like that, I review the races and I'm constantly watching like, okay, what car also looks like it can take those curves and what cars doesn't, because there's sometimes cars that can handle, just completely mobbing some curbs where yours couldn't. So there's a lot of things that we look for. And if you can find onboard footage from someone, if they're willing to give that to you, just knowing what gears they're in or how they're tackling the course. But you just kind of got to go out there and do it. And this is where developing racecraft is so important, because when you're up against people you don't know, you really got to kind of watch them and figure out, okay, like that's where they're usually braking. Their car looks pretty jerky, so they're like fast on their hands and they might turn in on you. So where is there the safest place to pass that specific car? So there's a lot of strategy and just there's a lot of thinking and also no thinking, because it's at some point just becomes subconscious for you to do. And just going out there, and you just got to get up to pace because the team wants to see that you're fast. And then it's just managing the cars around you and just trying to navigate that in the safest way possible.
And you touched a little bit even before about visualization. How much of that how much of that do you go through prior to a race?
Yeah, visualization is huge. And it's not just like the term that one of my mental coaches calls it is actualization. So it's not even just visualizing what you're doing on track. It's like the sounds that you're going to hear. It's going to be the, even just like you're feeling, like feel your heart go and feel like what sounds you're going to hear and what even smells you're going to smell. Like try to prepare yourself as much as possible. And so we do a lot of that. Like sometimes you'll see when we're off track and the car's just sitting there, they'll just seeing the wheels moving if it's up on the jacks. They're like, what's going on? And it'll just be me in the car like practicing the track and like going through it. And even to a point where like if you're on like little rumble strips, like feel that, like feel everything.
Wow.
And it just takes away some of the additional processing that your brain has to do. Because when you come into a track and you're just trying to figure out your way of going and how this is going to feel, if you can eliminate that, now all of a sudden you can jump a couple steps ahead and start focusing on the nitty-gritty details of like how to go faster. Yeah, visualization is absolutely massive for us, especially because track time is so expensive, right?
Yeah,
so you got to find every way you can to like visualize and be on the track without being on the track, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, because we talk about that all the time here, especially for our hockey guys, because ice time is super expensive now here as well. 50 minutes could be anywhere between 500 to 650, 700, depending on the time of day. But peak hours is what you're looking at. So I always tell people ice time is incredibly expensive. It's something that you need to be efficient with and getting the maximum effectiveness, right? So I try to tell people, try to do as much as you can off the ice.
Yep.
Right? And that you're not on the ice learning something brand new.
For sure.
Right? It's still, a novel idea, I think, for some people. But, that's what we try to do here. And because I think, like you said, preparation is, I think, the more that you do, the more talented you look. But you've been doing preparation the entire time. Right?
Exactly.
I think that if we can help athletes prepare, and to your point about feeling like rumble strips and stuff like that. I'm telling you, our hockey guys do not think that way yet, right? Yeah. That they're more about, me scoring a goal and feeling good and, positivity, which I think is good too. Yeah. But, what if you're battling in a corner? What if you're, you lose control of the puck? Now what do you do? Like those types of things I think are you're touching on.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because that was something that I really had to kind of restructure the way I visualize things, because of course there's that. I'm like, I'll be on, I get goosebumps even thinking about it. But I'll be on podium. My niece and nephew will be there. They'll be so proud. And it's hard to not think about all of that. But the thing is in order to get there, you have to execute your performance. So by you kind of just putting your focus on the results, first off, you can't control results because you can't control things that are out of your control.
Yeah.
So for example, I could go out there and completely dominate my performance, and on the last lap, my clutch blows, and now I can't finish the race. Therefore, now I couldn't control that result. So kind of fantasizing or thinking or like being so focused on the end result is in a way kind of wasteful of your time because you can't control that. So really focusing on how am I going to execute my performance and making sure that the thing that I can control, does its absolute best, and however the cards fall after that is how they do, and hopefully it leads to proper success. But yeah, that's something that I've learned. You got to be kind of strategic with how you prepare.
So on that note, when you're, say like you're in either a practice lap or qualifying, how is that different than when you're actually in a race where you've got other people on the track?
Yeah.
Do you change your strategy a little bit? And also, like, because I remember you and I had a conversation where I was asking you at one point, like, what do you look at when you're racing?
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me, like, you're literally looking through the car that's in front of you to the other car in front of that. And I was like, what? Tell us a little bit about that, because that to me is like fascinating, like how you're racing.
For sure. So definitely there's different strategies, and I always look at it like a different hat to put on for whatever session it is. So when you're putting your qualifying hat on, it's like, all right, we have a whole strategy. How are we going to quickly get heat in the tires, and how are we looking to manage the track? So you don't want to be in traffic when you're qualifying. You want a clear track ahead of you from behind and front as much as possible, and you want to go. So there's less to kind of think about when you're qualifying outside of utilizing the tire while it's in its prime state to its fullest potential. But when you're in a race, it's exactly that. You're constantly, like, your thought process will always change based off of what's happening. But typically the car in front of you, first off, you don't want to be looking at the car in front of you, because if that car slips up, you've now made a mistake because you're following that car. So either looking beyond that car or looking at what's in front of it, because that car is also going to, how its mannerism is going to be is dictated by what's happening in front of it. So if you can catch it early and be like, oh man, that guy's going to get checked up under braking, I can check my side and see if there's a way to dodge that and catch him on the inside or the outside or something like that. So there's constantly this like strategy that's in mind, and it's interesting because I don't know, say in a game like basketball that I used to play, like your goal is, you know, I was a post, I was down low, I was a big, and it was always like, all right, defense, and you're constantly like reading a play and being like, well, that person's popping out, maybe the ball can go there. And I feel like that also kind of helped my brain in a way, because in racing, you're not only just like looking at, you're not racing just what's ahead of you, what's beside you, behind you, and also what could potentially happen. So you're constantly just like scanning. Yeah, to say what I'm thinking about is very difficult because it constantly changes. But you're racing the track also because the track evolves. So for example, on a hot summer day, your brake zones all of a sudden won't be the same as they were at the start of the race, because now heat has built up in those brake zones and you don't have as much traction. So now you're reading the track at the same time and knowing where to kind of adjust your lines and your points that you've set out. So if you want to be mentally exhausted, race cars. Like there's so much. There's so much to think about.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I constantly talk to my athletes here too. That like, yes, you play hockey, but it's so important to look in so many different directions, not just what's in front of you,
for sure.
but like you said, like what's beside you, what's behind you, and also in hockey, obviously, there might be some situations where the puck is in your feet. So you're constantly doing this while you're avoiding getting hit and getting demolished that way, or making another play. So I think there's a lot of transferable things, and obviously, like you touched on it too, that having the ability to play multiple sports, and you played a ton of sports, and now that helps you with your racing. Like, I mean, we talk about here, should you only play hockey? I said absolutely not.
No.
Play as many as you can, right?
Well, it's interesting because looking back at my athletic career with some of the other sports that I had played, I realized that my hand-eye coordination has always kind of been really good. Defensively, that was kind of my strength in sports. And I remember this one game, we were in high school and we were playing a basketball game, and the girl was trying to inbound the ball and I was on her. And It took her, I don't even know, it was like 6 or 7 times to actually get the ball through, because I kept reading it and blocking it and like and stuffing it back out. And so it was funny because she got like frustrated at one point, and you can run the line, and so she was trying to do that, and I just kept getting the ball. And at this point, it was like kind of funny for me. I wasn't even trying to grab it at this point because it was a game for me. I was just like, let's see if I can get it this time.
Right.
And so even on a defensive side of things, if you can read a play quick and you can kind of see, okay, this is the trajectory of what I think this is where this is going. You can intercept, you can steal, like, and defensively that was always my strength. And I think that that's definitely transferred into racing, and just my time as a triathlete, the amount of dedication it takes. And of course you have a team in racing, but it's also very individual. Once you're in the car, like, it's you, right? And so that was very much with triathlons. It's like, okay, when you're scared or you don't feel like pushing, like, how do you keep yourself going? And so, yeah, even just on the mental side of things, there's a lot.
And the thing that you mentioned too was, you know, the things that you can't control, right?
Yes.
And like you said, if your gearbox goes on that last lap,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, we only see it in on TV, right, where the driver's getting frustrated.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to think in terms of the driver's mindset. Is that driver at that moment in time, who's he blaming at that point? You know, because that's probably, you know, emotionally, that's the first thing you go to. It's like, I was right there. The car broke. I did everything I could.
Yeah.
Right?
I think a good driver understands that that's part of the game.
Okay.
I remember, was it 2020 or 2019 or something? I was leading the race. And this was my first time in a new class of racing. And I was like, oh, you know, just wanted to kind of prove myself, and I'm like, holy crap, like I'm gonna win this. And of course, going up the back straight at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, just all of a sudden, boom, my engine exploded. And there was like parts of my engine block just flying everywhere, and I had to pull off to the side. And you know, like, I had to obviously just get out safely. My number one thing was get out safely, because we're on the back straight where cars are doing like well over, you know, 200 kilometers and so forth. So I got out safely and took a couple of deep breaths, and I was like, this is the unfortunate part of this sport. It happens. And I decided to kind of stand on the sidelines, and I cheered on the other racers on the last lap, and I was like, you know, kind of giving them thumbs up and clapping for them. And it's all just mindset, right? It's how you decide to look at things. And when you can fully understand what's in your control and what's not in your control, it's actually very life-changing. Outside of sport, in 2021, I was diagnosed with an aggressive tumor in my left knee. And this was during a very, like, when I was just getting my break to go pro. And we were filming a documentary, and this, like, I had a month before the race, the big race of my career, to race a professional car. And it took them about 5 months, because it was a rare disease I had been diagnosed with. So long story short, I got the surgery a month before I had to fly down to California to go do this race. And the doctors told me, listen, like, forget about the race. Like, you're not doing it. You're going to be on crutches for 6 weeks. Like, this could be up to a 12-week process to heal from. In my head, throughout that entire process was, I can't control that I'm being diagnosed with something crappy. I can't control the fact that I got to go into surgery immediately. What can I control? So before surgery, I started working out as hard as possible so I could be as physically fit before the surgery as I could. I sold my manual car, got into an automatic so I could get myself to and from my appointments. I got myself situated at my sister's house, which was a bungalow, and so forth. And I got physio appointments set up the day after surgery, even though it was just me FaceTiming with Caesar from Strengthen You, just doing the alphabet with my foot at the time. And long story short, I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I started controlling what I could in that time. And not only did I get back into the car in a month, recovered enough to be in there, I was the fastest driver they chose. And I had also hosted a fundraiser raising money, which we've raised over $100,000 so far for research and patient care for it. So that's just like one of those things where it's outside of sport. Life will always throw curveballs, and life isn't always easy to navigate. But if you can kind of understand that concept of control what you can control and let go of what you can't, it will really help just navigate life as a whole, in my opinion.
I think, and you're right, there's a lot of times where a lot of people don't understand what is under their control and what's not, right?
Yeah.
And so that starts to, as soon as you take ownership of things that you can't control, that's when you get anxiety and all sorts of different things, because you don't know what to do, and you're trying to think, well, if I do something over here, maybe it'll change something that's outside of my control, but you can't.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah. Jacques Delairs, the gentleman, the mental coach, he actually worked with Ayrton Senna. He's the one that kind of helped also reinstate those beliefs, and he has a book, Performance Thinking, if anyone wants to read it. It's a good read. But it's exactly that. It's figuring out what is in my control and what's not. And I think that helps athletes navigate it, because like we've talked about the highs and lows of any sport, it's tough because not only do you have to be physically on your game, mentally, like your mental preparation and your mental strength is number one. So that's kind of, if you can kind of work on that, then I feel like it helps just with everything.
And just on the mental side of things, like, what do you do during like the off season? Obviously, there's in season and off season. You're now in your off season.
Yes.
What would you say you'd be doing at this point that helps you prepare for the upcoming season from a mental perspective?
Yeah. So for me personally, it's a lot of time on the sim. And like we mentioned earlier, this is the time where we're trying to hustle for a ride. We're trying to hustle for sponsors to get us there and keep us in a car. And it's a lot of still trying to stay active without being in a car. So this is a lot of our preparation time. Yeah, so it's, again, just sim races, sim training, staying active, staying fit. And for most of us, it's also booking gig work. Like a lot of race car drivers, how we stay active in cars is also instructing and coaching and so forth. And so, yeah, I just got off the Porsche ice experience. And so we were drifting 911s on ice. And even something like that, it's good to stay active. It's good to kind of train your reaction times. And so, it's a non-stop kind of grind to make a living doing it as well. So you'll notice a lot of race car drivers, like outside of F1, are always still booking, coaching and instructing work like that.
Yeah. Sim work, like tell me a little bit about that. Like, because obviously I'm a huge fan of sims as well.
Yeah.
But is that something that is like a must-have as a racer these days?
These days, absolutely. If you aren't on a sim, it's just you're falling behind on the technology and the tools at hand that we have now. But the sim stuff, it really teaches you not only just the track layouts, but race etiquette and racecraft. There's a lot, even if you don't race with real people, you can race with AI and you can turn the intensity of their abilities up or down based off of, where you're at to kind of build confidence. And it's an awesome tool for us to train on. And you can also dabble in different forms. Like you could do dirt oval or rally or, track stuff and hop into different cars that, so it's pretty cool. And even again, just for the visualization kind of stuff, because the cabin of the car, they have it exactly like the vehicle. So for the AMG GT4 that I was racing, the steering wheel was the same, the cockpit looked the same. So it was interesting because it's like when you get to the real track, it's almost as if you've been there. So sim racing is interesting. And honestly, with the technology that you have with the eye tracker and for all of the brain waves, the tracking that you have with that, it'd be very cool to kind of have all of that technology on while doing sim racing, because even just training your visual, like where you're looking at the track. I remember we were at Sonoma and I found like 0.3 of a second just for one corner. I was looking a little too shallow, and if I opened up my horizon, that alone gave me 0.3. So that
Really?
shows how important vision is for racing.
Yeah, because obviously racing is time based. So to shave off, any extra second is a huge advantage.
Not even just a second, like a tenth of a second.
Tenth of a second,
like if you can find a tenth in qualifying is like can put you from like P10 to P1. So it's like when you time out a tenth of a second, you almost don't know what happened. So it's it's pretty crazy.
There's a video on YouTube with Jerry Seinfeld, right?
Oh yes, of course, yeah.
And then the difference between gold and silver.
Yep.
It's like gold, silver. right? Like it's like literally like a nose length, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you come in second, so obviously coming in first is fantastic, that you're on top of the world.
Yes.
What does it feel like to come in second?
Coming in second is so bittersweet. And it's funny because there was, in 2023, I was running FVL with the Mercedes, and it just seemed like the Mustang was so dominant for so many years, no one could touch the Mustang. Everyone has their own reasons for that, but the gentleman, he was a great driver, but it was just the dominance of the Mustang. And so, it was frustrating because there'd be times like in the rain where I was leading for the majority of it, and then up the back straight you'd be passed, and then you had to settle for second. And it's just like, yeah, I'm happy I made podium, but it was just like eventually my smile just got less and less on podium. And like the last race weekend, I was just straight faced. I wasn't even smiling because I was just so pissed. I was like, just let me I just want to see the top step again. But, yeah, it's racing, especially when it's like a close battle and it could have gone either way. But again, it's just if it was like a fair, hard-fought race, you just accept it and move on. But you never want to be in second for too long. We're always looking to win. So it's But then again, if you're in a series where you're like, man, this is super competitive and I'm with like crazy fast people, and you play second, you're pretty stoked to be on podium, in general.
Right.
But the goal is always to win. We always want to win. That's kind of where we want to be. So yeah.
There's an interesting book that I'm reading called Power of Regret.
Power of Regret. Okay.
Yeah, with Daniel Pink.
Yeah.
And he talks exactly about that. It's like third place, bronze medal.
Yeah.
You're just happy you got a bronze medal.
Yes, yeah.
Right? And first place, of course, you're happy there. But he tracked all the people that came in second.
Yeah.
And they just don't look happy.
No. That's like the worst part. You're just like, man, I could have had you.
Yeah. But I think that if I only did that one thing that might have gotten me to that first place or gold medal, I think, that's really the whole premise of his message, is use that as an opportunity to learn that one thing that will take you to the top.
Well, usually when you've made a mistake that has took you, especially when you were that close to being the winner, we're really critical of ourselves. And, the thing with competitive racing is like one little mistake and it's like that's it, say you braked a little too late and you came in hot and you understeered a bit and you pushed, and so you didn't get the greatest exit, but that was on a corner that meant the most on that track, and now all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, there's so many different things where it's like you have to be so focused and so on every second, every corner. You can't give up time, especially in competitive racing.
Okay, so going back to the things you can't control, because I love talking about this. So 2 summers ago at the Indy,
yes,
I was sitting in the grandstand.
Yep.
And literally that was that turn that you came around and you clipped the corner of the car that was already spun out.
Yes.
And I remember talking to the entire weekend, seeing the car, when it first got hit, and I could tell, you're trying to cope with what's going on. So tell us a little bit about that race, because I remember every little detail, but I wanted to have you share that.
All right, so this was 2023 Toronto Honda Indy. I was racing the Mercedes AMG GT4, and this was a race I've been going to ever since a little kid. So to be on the other side of the fence was huge for me. And I was actually going down to Toronto weeks in advance, just walking. And when they were setting up, going, and I was just I dressed in utility, kind of looking close, so people just thought I was working there. But little did they know I had my notebook, and I was making note of the camber and how the road fell off and what grates to watch out for, and I studied that track I was an undercover cop looking to bust someone for a drug deal or something. That was my focus. And so it paid off. I qualified on pole for both races, which was probably to this day still career highlight for me. That was one of the coolest moments for me. And race one happens. I'm leading the race, and I had this guy in the exact same car who has, I think it was like 100 IMSA starts or something like that. So he was a well-seasoned racer with, like, behind me in the same car. And I'm like, if anything, I kind of got to beat that guy to show that, you know, I'm the top Mercedes here. And so I held him off, and I was in first for the majority of the race. And then came through a blind corner, which led to the front straight, and there was no yellow flag. There was no message on radio that there was a car completely pitched sideways and crashed, and came through the corner and had nowhere to go but into him, and it just turned out to be my boyfriend's brother on top of it, which sucked, because I'm like, oh my God, Quinn, like you humanize the car all of a sudden, you don't want to injure them. And so did my best to avoid it, but just clipped his car so hard and just completely demolished the front right of my car. And just limping down Lakeshore, still no yellow, knowing that could have caused a whole, whole other cluster of accidents. But so coming down the front straight, all the cars passed me, lost the lead, and then they went under yellow halfway down Lakeshore, and lost my lead, lost my opportunity to see a first place trophy at the Toronto Indy, which it stung, because now for the rest of the weekend you're driving a compromised car. Like, the team worked very hard and put the car back together where it was enough to kind of go out, but it's definitely not the same. Like, you've destroyed the front end of your car. So going through that, especially, like, it stung so bad, but it was just kind of that thing where the next race is still going to happen.
Yep.
So I can either sit here and keep dwelling on how much that sucked, or you can just kind of suck it up and accept it for what it was. And don't get me wrong, I really had to practice what I preached that weekend, because a lot of me just wanted to, like, break down and cry and didn't want to accept the reality of it. But it is what it is. But they know who should have won that race. So it's fine.
Yeah. I remember because it just happened right in front of where we were sitting. Yeah. And my heart sank that moment too. But what I really loved about you is, we'd go to your tent and, kind of see how you're doing and how the car was, that car just was like, it looked brand new by the time it was taped up, of course. For sure, yeah. But for the amount of work that in that short period of time too, to get it to that condition. And I remember you telling me, like, you said you had the steering wheel like this. To go straight. Just to go straight, right? But the way you kind of dealt with that, I thought was fantastic. Like, I could name off a whole bunch of hockey players that could definitely learn from that type of experience where, things are not going well. And again, things that are outside your control, but you turn it into something good, and you still kept a smile on your face anytime we saw you. And I was just happy to see you guys. But but at any time, like, things are, down, people do have a tendency to kind of carry that on and it's like this luggage that comes with you. For sure. But I think in racing, especially in racing, like, the more you, like you said, the more you can distinguish between what's outside of control versus what's in your control. I think that was, like you said, it's a true test. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think for me, being there, being able to show that I was the fastest car, I outqualified everyone for both races, and being able to lead that race, for a good chunk of the race, like, for me, there was some reassurance in that I was doing the right things. And I think as an athlete, for me, winning is great, and I love winning, but I've also come to learn that that's also result-based. And if I can walk away from a performance and be like, man, I gave that my all and I showed that I belong there. And even if I walk away and be like, I gave that my all and I showed that, like, I could use some work, because that also happens, that's more constructive. That serves me more purpose, because I can win a race but have made like 100 mistakes through it. And if I base my performance and how good I was off of that victory, it's like, well, no, you still had a lot of work to do. So you got to kind of look at other things. And obviously winning the Toronto Indy would have been a dream come true, which didn't
come to fruition that weekend, but I did show that, you know, I was one of the faster cars, and if I can walk away knowing that, like, hey, I showed that, like, my hard work and my studying and how much effort I put in to train for this paid off, because the Toronto Indy, the layout wasn't on a sim. So it's not like you could go and practice that on the sim prior to the race weekend. So yeah. So anyways, it was cool.
Yeah. And tell me about at the time, obviously, like, you know, that car, the GT is like one of my favorite cars to drive, right? Like, and I remember when it first came out, it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Tell us what's it like to drive that car in particular, because that's something that you know, it's obviously it's a very expensive car. But what's it like to drive something like that?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. Yes, the Mercedes AMG GT4 was, well, it's first off a $500,000 car, so it's probably one of the most expensive cars I've ever had the pleasure of racing. And I remember getting into it for the first time, and prior to that, I was just racing home-built BMWs and trying to make a name for myself. And so when I got the opportunity to drive that specific car, you can imagine why I was so determined to be at that race. But it was like, at first you looked into it and you're like, man, this is like everything I saw as like a little kid going to the racetracks and looking into like the seats, and if a race car driver was like kind enough to put you in the car, it's like everything I kind of visualized as a little kid materializing in front of me. And you know, the cars are so sophisticated and they have so much where you can adjust the traction control, you can adjust the ABS, you can adjust the brake bias. And so it's interesting because when you hop into a car like that, at first it almost feels like it's easier to drive than your home built stuff, because it takes a lot more. There's no technology in those cars. But then when you're trying to squeeze the last little bit, because there's so many different things that you can be adjusting in the car, it's like you got to keep staying on top of like, okay, so now if I feel the car do this, I could turn the traction control down and so forth. But it's so cool just to dump the clutch and rip the biggest burnout leaving the pits like that. Like, honestly, is the most fun thing ever. That's probably my most favorite thing to do.
You just want to pit all the time. Like,
I know, exactly. To a point where the team was kind of like, all right, Demi, so if the tires are hot, you know, try to get off of it gracefully. Like, don't just keep dumping the clutch. And I'm like, but that's the fun part. But yeah, honestly, like when you're heading out for your stint, so you've just done a driver change and you've been pumping yourself up, like while your teammates in there, you do the driver change and you're like waiting for the countdown on your digital clock there, and like you got the car started and you're waiting for your crew chief to like let you out, and as soon as you get that and you dump the clutch and you're just like ripping the tires and going, like that for me was all the money, like right there. So racing the GT4 car was an absolute treat and a pleasure and a privilege. You know, I always dreamed of doing that, but never knew if it was going to materialize for me or if that was going to be an option for me. And I'm so grateful that it did happen, because like I can say I did it, and I hope that there's a lot more opportunity still in the future for me to continue racing GT4 cars. But yeah, it was so cool to also learn, because you can pull so much data from the car as well. So I'm somebody who likes to kind of nerd out with with data and figuring out how do we go faster, and if I do this, how does that manipulate the car? And so being able to pull all of that data and sit down with an engineer and look at it and see like, you know, hey, you thought you were going completely flat there, but we see in the data there's a little lift, and you're like, man. So I actually learned when I'm coming through a high-speed corner where you have to be flat, and like there's hesitation with your foot. My teammate actually taught me this. You just mash your leg into the gas pedal and just put so much pressure where you're just like you can't lift. And so I don't know, just like working with data and like proving data wrong or like proving it right, I guess was very cool for me. So yeah.
And when you're driving and you're making those adjustments, you're doing it in real time, right? Like as you're so. How much, like, are you even paying attention to the road at that point? Like, yeah?
So that's so funny. Yeah, you're always paying attention. But sometimes, like, if you do get, so this is another part of visualization and being in the car and practicing, because if you're like looking like, oh shit, where's the ABS and where's the traction control, part of my language, and like kind of figuring out where everything is, yeah, all of a sudden you've taken your eyes off the road,
right.
And now all of a sudden you're coming into a corner, you're like, whoa, that's way too, like, it throws you off. And so for me, I actually learned, like, on the dash, there's like one seam that goes through it, and I knew if like I traced that seam down, directly underneath it was the traction control, and if I moved my fingers one over, it was ABS. And you know, you just got to find ways to kind of do it on the fly, and sometimes I would be adjusting that based off different corners on the track. So for example, at Motorsport, like, and I'm just throwing numbers out, I forget what I was actually running. Say I was running TC8 for the track, and I knew that I heard and I felt too much traction control intervention on exit through some of the corners. I would go and be like, okay, mental note, I need to change that for the exit so I can get a better go. And so coming into turn 4, I would go and turn the traction control down, coming into 5, and then up the back straight, turn it back. So you're like, when I say there's a lot to think about, there's like, you're manipulating a lot in the car as well.
Yeah, because it's not on the wheel, right?
No, those, maybe some GT4 cars, but for us personally, they were on the center console.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. That's like looking at your cell phone. And
yeah, and you also have to be mindful, because in the Mercedes, when the higher up the number meant the less traction control.
Oh, okay.
So you had to kind of like remember, like, oh no, that's supposed to go this way instead of that way. So yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Now, would you also do that on the sim too?
No, on the sim, it's harder, because I think you have to actually go in and set. You gotta like click the So I don't personally have the wheel to do it. I don't know if other people do. It might be a thing, but for my sim, no.
Okay.
For my boyfriend's sim that I use.
Yeah.
Currently building my own, but yeah.
Yeah. No, because that's super interesting for me, because you know, I would assume that everything is on the wheel and just kind of, you know, I mean, obviously in F1 it's a little bit different, but like you're gonna have to look in different areas, and obviously you got one hand on the wheel when you're doing that, right?
Yeah, so you got to choose when to do that and when's the best time to go and
it's
start.
So fascinating.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? Like what's next in your horizon right now?
So there's a few interesting opportunities that have come, and I can't announce fully what I'm doing just yet for this season, but I do have an opportunity for a full-time ride in something that is different. It's still considered sports car, but it is different than what I've been currently racing, and I'm a big believer in hopping into different chassis and different platforms, because it forces you to grow in different ways that you didn't know you needed, and it just makes you more of a well-rounded driver. And I think I'm somebody who has been known to kind of hop into different things and race different stuff. So I am really looking forward to this. Still looking for partners to do the full season. So if anyone's interested, feel free to reach out.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's going to be, there's a few different things on the go right now. So I will be in a car. I will be racing for 2025. I promise you it'll be rad. It'll be very cool. Mm-hmm. And just very much looking forward to keeping the ball rolling with my career and the progression going, because for me personally, I have obviously a passion for racing, and this is what I love to do, but I do feel like I have a purpose behind it. And I feel like with my platform, I have been able to inspire so much more for the sport. And from the time I started racing, I've been a big promoter and influencer, so to speak, for young girls and women to come into the sport. And I think it's starting to catch on, and we need to continue that ball rolling. And I have lots of plans to kind of introduce and help more young girls get into racing. And I just want to be that person that they can look up to, because if you can see it, you can be it. And for me personally, coming through racing, I never really got to see females racing. If I was at the track with my dad or, my parents, it was the umbrella girls or the podium girls. And that kind of serves the message to young little girls that, if you want to be involved in the sport, that's what you have to be. And so that's, again, going back to what I said earlier, why I put such an emphasis on being on podium, because that it's interesting, going back to the Honda Indy, there was a parent who reached out to me, and it was this little girl, and the dad sent a video of me ripping around. She was like in this go-kart in a parking lot, and she's just like, you can hear her laugh through the helmet. She's having a great time. I got goosebumps. And the dad said, I just want to personally thank you because my daughter saw you on podium at the Toronto Indy. She's now super inspired to get into racing. And she was like, and she called it a cup, the trophy. She was like, look, Daddy, and she won a cup. And so like, it's just like, it kind of just reaffirms all of everything I've been trying to do for the last 10 years to kind of promote and just have more young girls kind of come into the sport. And as I mature in my career and, there's some personal life things and goals that I want to also achieve, I think what I want to do in my personal life can also serve as an influence for young girls in the sport too. So there's just a lot more I want to do. So I'm happy just to continue having a platform in racing.
Yeah, no, it's a great story because you're one of the pioneers of women in racing, and
thank you.
And that's what piqued my interest, when we first met. And we're just happy to be part of your journey, and I look forward to supporting you even more.
Thank you.
And hopefully, we can get more female, drivers involved, and continue to kind of pave that path. We're seeing it in women's hockey right now as well, in real time, where now it's a actual league, structured league, and it's sustainable too. And so I'd definitely like to see that in racing as well. Where can people find you on? I know you've got different channels, so where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, you can find me on almost every platform, just at Demi Chalkias, and demiracing.com is my website. So definitely check me out. I would say Instagram is probably what I'm most active on, and but yeah, any platform if you reach out. And if there's anyone watching that does have like a little girl that is interested in racing, please reach out to me. I love having little girls come to the track, put them in the car. And prior to the pandemic, I used to do back to school giveaways for young girls, and the parents would write in and we'd choose a winner, and I'd bring my race car to their home, and they could bring 8 of their friends or so forth, and I made back to school backpacks for them with like inspirational notebooks and so forth, and they got to dress up as race car drivers and go in the car and rev the engine and so forth. So if you have a little girl, please, it's something that I love doing, so bring them out. But follow me on social media, check out my website, send me an email.
And there's a documentary too, by the way, right?
Yes, we haven't even, we didn't
I didn't even touch on that. Tell us also about that documentary, sorry.
No, absolutely. The documentary that came out, it's called The Car Knows No Difference. And so it showcases 3 Canadian female drivers from across Canada, and we all come together to do an endurance race with the AMG GT4. And 2 of us after that got signed to go pro with racing. And so it's honestly, it's a super well done documentary, and Mercedes played a huge role in it, and they did a wonderful job helping us get the word out for the documentary. And we saw the stats of it, and I think it's so far had like over 100 million views.
No way.
Yeah, so it's done really well, and we might be working on something for part 2, so stay tuned for that. But it's streaming now on TSN Plus, and it's coming out to other various streaming services in the very near future. I can't announce those ones just yet, but you'll be able to catch it on quite a few streaming services in the next little while.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing all your successes, and
thank you.
And again, love to be part of your journey, and any way that we can help you, we're happy to help you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this concludes our podcast. I know we could probably talk for hours, but thanks very much for coming in today and joining our podcast. And this is a really great platform for all of our clients, and as well as all of our friends to kind of see like where we're going as an organization as well. So thanks again for joining today, and we look forward to seeing you guys very, very soon on our future podcast on Cognition School. So thanks again.